there are games that have big reputations in Japan that are almost unheard of outside of the country. Urusei Yatsura, Lamu no Wedding Bell is one of those games. And let's just say it's more infamous than popular. There are two threads we need to follow at the start of this. Let's begin with Urusei Yatsura. It was a wildly popular comic and cartoon in the 1980s. The very short version of it is that a lecherous jerk has an alien princess move in with him after she thinks he proposed to her. It's one of those things from the 1980s that you shouldn't go back and revisit now. And if you know Urusei Yatsura for anything, it would be the alien princess Lum, who kind of became the face of Japanese animation for a little while. Meanwhile, Jalico released an arcade game called Momoko 120%. It was pretty forgettable, but there is one weird thing about it. The background music is a rendition of the opening theme to the Urusei Yatsura cartoon. When it came time to make the home port, Jalico changed out the sprites for the character to Lum. The story of the game is extra confusing. An earthquake at their high school opened up a space-time warp and set the building on fire. Lum has regressed to early childhood and will have to go through each era of schooling again. She has to climb to the roof of the burning building in order to get out, and that ages her up to the next level of schooling. Also, the space-time warp stripped her of her ability to fly for some reason. Yeah, that wasn't the cleanest way to justify switching out all the sprites. Each school is a multi-story building, and the big challenge is locating the path upward. You could get up by taking an escalator, bouncing on a trampoline, or riding an elevator. The levels wrap, so you can just keep going in one direction and wind up where you started. Keep an eye out for these holes though with the little circle and X in it. Those holes aren't crossable. As the game progresses, the buildings get taller and the fire spreads faster. This is one of those games where touching any little thing will kill you instantly, and the enemy spawns are random. The only consistent behavior that I noted was that they tend to appear right in front of you. The Famicom version greatly increased the enemy spawn rate, and that leads to several problems. You'll often have enemies appear where you're going to land when you've dedicated yourself to a jump. You can't fire while you're crossing on these overhead bars, and there will often be an unending stream of enemies spawning on the far side. Even worse, some of these bars are longer than the screen, so you have no hope of clearing it out before you start to cross. And those enemies are a large part of why it's no fun to play this game. You're going to die a lot to circumstances that are effectively out of your control. It's intensely frustrating when the flow of enemies just doesn't stop, and you just can't get over a hole. There are power-ups in the game, but they're all invisible. You have to jump in the right spot to make them appear, and then jump again to collect them. The most common thing you'll need to spot are switches, which will activate moving platforms. But other ones will make you invincible for a short time, or change your outfit from the tiger stripes to a schoolgirl uniform. Once you reach the top of the building, keep an eye out for the UFO. You have to grab onto that, and that will carry you on to the next stage. In between stages, Lum will age up a little bit, and then you're back at the bottom floor of the school. The weirdest thing about Urusei Yatsura is just how many Lum sprites there are in the game. There's 10 full designs in the game. A basic one for each of the 5 levels, and then the alternate uniform that you can pick up. Urusei Yatsura Lamu no Wedding Bell isn't the worst game I've played for this project, but it's one of the most infuriating ones. I really felt that the thing restricting my progress wasn't my lack of skill, it was the way that the game was designed. And maybe I could learn to mitigate the enemy behavior, but this isn't a good enough game for me to even try that. The most interesting thing about the game to me is that they matched the color of the cartridge to Lum's bikini. That's not much of a legacy.